To go. Well, welcome everybody. I haven't had the pleasure to meet most of you yet. I'm Dr. Ben, if you don't know who I am. And so this is a really unique and special time for me just because, Dr. Rob and I with Christ-Centered Chiropractic, obviously we've been seeing a lot of people for a long time. We have a lot of businesses. We've been very successful with our careers. So we don't do this for money at this point. We also don't charge students anything to help them. Our seminars are always free to students. Our coaching is always free to students. We're just here to help make people able to have this amazing career they deserve. We want this investment in chiropractic to pay off. Recently, a young woman, like literally this week, who's going to go to Palmer, she contacted us and she's considering not going to Palmer. She's considering not starting, and it has nothing to do with the School of Palmer Chiropractic, but she's worried that it's not a good investment. So she's studied, if I make a $200,000-$300,000 investment in school, does it really pay off? And if you actually study that, if you go look at what sort of the economic pundits are saying, they would tell you that it's not a good investment. Because if you look at the $200,000-$300,000 investment, the student loans versus what the average chiropractor makes, it doesn't add up. You're not making enough per year to ever pay off those loans. And so you end up in very deep debt without the return. So if you go about this wrong, then that's kind of accurate. It's not a good investment. But if we do this correctly, then that $250,000, $300,000 is going to turn into millions of dollars. And it will be the best money and the best time ever spent. And that's the goal of this talk, this Zoom meeting right here, is to help make sure this was a great investment for you to decide. In fact, the best day of your life was the day you decided to go to chiropractic college. One other quick side note, and Dr. Matt, I'm calling you Dr. Matt. So Dr. Matt, he knows that we had 3 different doctors all within 1 week come to us because they had started a practice after school, and those practices were failing. So they not only had school debt, they now started a practice, and those practices were dying. And they had hundreds of thousands of dollars of more debt from the practices. And so, again, a big reason why we're here tonight is I want to make sure that you understand where those landmines are and don't step on them. And so, hopefully we'll get that by the end of this set of slides, what you should do, as well as I really want to encourage you to get to the Orlando event. I know you guys are pretty close, December 8th and 9th, because that's really where we'll teach you these different ways of building a successful practice. And if we're just talking purely about money, making more money so you can get out of debt really fast. Because at the end of the day, this whole event is called How to Get Out of Debt, no student loans, debt free in 90 days. That's 90 days of being in your first practice. So obviously at some point you've got to make money. So if you're not making money, you can't get out of debt. There's no magic wand you could swipe there. I actually wrote a book. If you come to the event, I'll just give you one as a student. Called 0 to $1 Million in 1 year. And it really takes you through the whole time of me opening the practice to getting open and out of debt in those 90 days. But also I've got other degrees. I've got my master's in industrial and organizational psychology, which is a business form of psychology. And then I'm getting my PhD in business administration. So the book gets into hiring and team management and financial management. There's a lot of other things that you'll get out of it. And again, we'll just give you one if we see you there in Orlando. So this was really interesting. This just came out, the National Study of Millionaires. I don't know if you guys saw this, but this was done by Dave Ramsey's group. And they studied who are the professions that become millionaires, that are the most likely to become millionaires. They have the most millionaires. And you'll notice if you look at the top 5, engineer, accountant, teacher, business management, attorney, there's no doctors. I thought doctors were the rich people, and they're on the top 5. They're not even in the top 10, from my understanding, from what Dave Ramsey says about this study. And what it proved was simply this, that it's not how much money you're making, it's how you manage the money. So if the money's managed improperly, then even a doctor can't become a millionaire, but a teacher can. Somebody on a small salary. In fact, we're going to get into the fact that somebody who works at Walmart, if they manage their money properly, they will retire a millionaire. So student loans, obviously that's the call today. How do you avoid this problem of a lifetime of student loan debt? You avoid that burden. How do we do that the rest of your career? So here's what it looks like. So if we look at a $250,000 student loan and you take like 20 years to pay it off. Now I'm an older dude. And so many of the doctors that come to me on a weekly basis, usually at least a couple of people come to me every week and say, man, I'm 40, 50, 60 years old. I still have so much of my student debt and I don't have any money really put away. I'm going to have to work until I die. What can I do now? And that's a little bit late to start looking into it, which is why I invited students to this call to try to help you avoid the phone calls that I get every week. So if you look at this, this is if you take 20 years to pay off that $250,000 student loan. And so what you'll notice is that the interest you would pay on $250,000 is $179,858. So almost $180,000 in interest if you took the full 20 years. That's a total payment of $429,858, which obviously started as $250,000. 20 years later, came close to doubling if you take the whole 20 years. If you paid it off in just 10 years, you have a huge savings. Instead of paying almost $180,000 in interest, you pay $83,000. In 5 years, that goes down to $39,000. And of course, we're trying to teach you if you could pay that off in 1 year, within 1 year after opening, you're just paying a few $1,000s extra on top of that $250,000. So the sooner we can pay that off, the better. Obviously, we'd all like to keep $180,000 of extra cash if we can. So this was really a blessing for me. The president of my chiropractic college, when I was there, told us this in one particular seminar. He said, when you graduate, you want to be out of debt with $1 million in the bank in 8 years. That was the target he gave us. So thankfully, I knew that target. I went and studied how to make money and how to get out of debt and the best way of managing the money. So I stayed very focused on that target, thanks to him telling me that. And within 6 years, instead of 8, I reached this goal where out of debt with $1 million in the bank in 6 years after graduation. And so I hope you guys kind of lock in on that, because that target really helps you track your plan and create your strategies. Now, here's kind of a better, longer game, is that we reach what I call the golden goal. So this is what I ended up making up, and some of you will chase this target. That's where you end up with $10 million put away, where $1 million a year is coming in off those investments. So you don't have to work at all, and just the investments spin off $1 million a year. So I was also able to do this in a relatively short period of time, which allows you to focus on just helping people, which is, I know, why we're all here. We wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be in chiropractic school if you weren't doing this to help people. Like I said, we're fortunate in that Dr. Rob and I don't charge anything to students. We're thankfully in a good financial position so that we can do this to help people. We coach students for free. Like I said at the beginning, they come to free to our events. We don't charge students anything because we can do it for the right reason. We both still see patients. We both help thousands of doctors, all because we love God and love to serve people and want to change the world. It doesn't have anything to do with the money anymore. And that's where we're hoping to get you if you reach certainly this golden goal. So what's the path there? I'm going to go quickly through a couple of these slides because they're not necessarily specific to this time in your life. But as you get out of school, the idea is we got to create the money machine. So we can't pay off the student debt, especially not in 90 days or within that first year like we'd like to, if we're not creating the money. So we'll talk in a minute about what does it mean to create the money machine. Once again, at the seminar here in December 8th and 9th, we're going to get into a lot of the specifics of doctors that are making a lot of money and how they're doing it. That's who the speakers are. And then once the money comes in, this is where doctors blow it. Like we showed earlier, very few doctors become millionaires because they don't know how to manage the money. So you have to learn how to generate the money and deploy it wisely. It has to go into the right thing. So I learned early on, thankfully, to first of all, deploy it towards my debt. So I wasn't buying a Maserati and a big house and a Rolex at the beginning. I was, getting rid of debt. That's what I invested in at first and got rid of all that student loan because that's where I put the money. So you got to deploy it wisely. And then eventually you have something besides you that generates the money. So ultimately, for example, I opened up a second clinic. So now another doctor, that staff, they were generating money, not just me, but again, I have to manage it wisely. So I'm not like all the other doctors who don't become millionaires and aren't paying off their student loans. You got to do the right thing with that money. Then finally, not only something besides you, but someone besides you. So as another example, something, again, we'll teach here to you guys at the event. We have a clinic. There's a woman that will speak there. She's got 2 small children, a husband. So she has a life that she wants to lead. So she doesn't have to be in the office, and her staff can put people on things like decompression, can do functional medicine. The staff can do laser. She's got other things that they offer. So someone besides her is actually generating income in her absence. In fact, her dad died maybe 2 months ago. So she was gone quite a bit for that. And the office set a record for collections with her not even there because someone else is generating money. So that's another tip there. Here's something I'll just point out real quick, because again, it's not necessarily age specific or stage specific to where you guys are. So there's 3 kinds of money. There's the earned money, there's the money we invest, and then there's passive income, like having real estate. This is money that just keeps making money tax-free. So something we help our doctors to do is understand those 3 types of money, because if you're just living off the earned money, then you have to just keep working harder and harder and harder to get anywhere financially. But as you invest it wisely, both in a portfolio or other things that generate passive income, then as you do that, you don't have to work so hard to be making money. So with that golden goal, like I said, I can make roughly $2 million a year at this stage and not work, because of it's really not about earned money anymore. The portfolio and the passive income both earn the $2 million. So here's an important thing relative to student loans. You guys might be aware of Einstein's 8th wonder of the world. So the 8th wonder of the world is the miracle of compounding interest. So that's where you've put money, you've gotten out of debt, you're putting money away wisely, and it's compounding because it's invested in an index fund. So it's in the stock market, or again, it's in real estate or mortgages or all the different places you can put money wisely to have it earning interest. And as long as that interest just stays and keeps getting reinvested, there's this miracle of compounding interest. So usually this is a common thing that they do when explaining compounding interest, is to show you this golf course betting example. So if you were to bet 10 cents on the first hole and have that bet double each hole, it starts off slow. So you could see by the end of the 5th hole, the bet is only $1.60 for that hole. And the accumulated bets so far at hole 5 are $3.10. Not a big deal. But as the miracle of compounding interest continues, you could see those last 4 holes. You could see that on hole 15, the bet is now up to $1,638. And on hole 18, again, we started at 10 cents, just doubling each hole. And by the 18th hole, that bet is $13,107. The total betting is $24,574 due to Einstein's 8th wonder, this miracle of compounding interest. Now, here's the problem, and you saw it earlier. If you keep your money in debt, so you keep that student loan or you have a lot of credit card debt, the miracle works against you instead of for you. So you guys see what I'm saying there? You have compounding debt, so the debt's getting worse and worse and worse, which is why that example where we started here, if you take the full 20 years to pay off your student loans, by the time you're done, a $250,000 student loan, you've now added on top of that another $180,000 because of the miracle of compounding interest killing you versus helping you. So that's why, again, important to pay these things off as quickly as we possibly can. And this is why, as we mentioned earlier, somebody who works at Walmart, somebody who just makes an hourly wage, works at a gas station, a landscaper, cashier, can become a millionaire by simply investing $300 a month. So they found all kinds of people that are way wealthier than doctors because they wisely manage their money, put away $300 a month into a income producing investment of some kind, and that multiplication factor turned them into a millionaire over 30 years. You guys have the benefit of time. You're young, so the sooner we can learn this, the better. So here's the landmines. These are the 3 landmines to avoid. And by the way, as we're going through this too, if anybody wants to ask a question, just ask it in the chat, and Dr. Matt and I will handle it. So the first thing is preparation. So this is specific to being a student. So as a student, think of it as an athlete. So both my kids are athletes. My daughter's Division I athlete, and my son wants to be a Division I athlete as a basketball player. So you're not going to be able to be a Division I athlete if you did not prepare while you were in school. So if you just show up to Duke and say, hey, coach, I'd like to play in the basketball team, that's hilarious. Like, you have not been preparing. If you hadn't been training and working hard all throughout school to be ready, in high school to be ready to play at the college level, you won't be ready to play at the college level. Never mind at the NFL or NBA or MLB level. Same thing here. I've worked with thousands of students. I've opened up 163 of my own clinics. And the ones that, while they were in school, knew how to prepare to be excellent chiropractors, because you can't just learn about it. Using that sports metaphor, if I just learned about basketball in high school, I won't be able to play at Duke or Kansas or North Carolina in college just learning about basketball. I have to have been playing basketball, training basketball. Same thing here. We can't just learn about chiropractic and how to practice in school if we want to do great coming right out of school. And again, the whole goal here is, how do I pay off my student loans in 90 days? We've got to be doing the right type of training and preparation in school so we get out, we can excel. So I've seen a lot of students get out and just start crushing it from day one after graduation. Well, that group of people did a lot to prepare. The second thing is the job. This is the second landmine you could step on. So if you go and get a job, and let's say the job pays pretty well, it's $70,000, $80,000 a year job out of school, but in that job, they're not teaching you how to grow a practice, how to build a practice, how to make a lot of money in practice, how to train staff, do all the things that come with practice. So you just have a job. So even though that job's pretty good, 75, 80 a year, where are you in 3 years? You've made probably just enough to be paying the minimum payment on your student loan through those 3 years, living pretty modestly with what's left over after $75,000, $80,000, not bad money. But in 3 years, you're no more ready to go crush it in practice and in life than when you were when you started. You have to really be careful about the job you choose, that job is actually a stepping stone to the future, where you're literally being trained in that job to be whatever it is you dream of being. So, for example, you could be in a program where they're teaching you everything about practice so that after a year or 2 or 3 in that associate position, you're completely ready to go off on your own and really thrive. Or there are certain opportunities where you go and you work for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and they're literally, the process is designed to put you in a practice that you'll own on your all by yourself and go on to really thrive and achieve your dreams. So that job, making sure that job is a stepping stone, a training process to get you ready to reach your dream practice. We got to make sure we choose the right job. I graduated a long time ago, and that was the first thing I noticed, that my friends who chose the wrong job out of school got stuck. And now here we are a quarter century later, and they're still stuck. They still have nothing, all their student loans. Chiropractic life didn't work out well for them. And it all went back to that preparation and that first job. Then finally, it's the system, and I'll bring up the Orlando seminar again, because we're going to show you the system of all these doctors that are speaking, and Dr. Rob and I, where the system you're learning is a lucrative one. I brought up this young lady a moment ago who, even when she's not there, the practice made $110,000 for 1 month. So she has 2 staff, 2 kids. She only works a few days a week, and the practice generates $110,000 a month. So more than $1 million a year practice, close to about 1.3 million a year in practice, without having to overwork, still has balance in her life. But yet, obviously, no matter what her student loans would have been, she could easily pay those off. She has no debt, making really wise investments now. We're helping her with that process as early as today, as recently as today. We're talking about this with her because of her system. Another doctor who's coming to speak, he has a regenerative medical clinic. So he sees a lot of people in his chiropractic side, but then he has this a whole other clinic on the regenerative medicine side. And that clinic alone, the secondary clinic makes over $1 million a year, and his chiropractic clinic makes over $1 million a year. So he's at over a $2 million a year location because he has the right system. So, so system means a lot. Another part of system is just the care plans themselves. So when you're seeing people, are we only making a few dollars every time we see somebody, like, say, like a joint type model, and nothing, against the joint specifically, but, you get, like, I think they charge maybe like $9 a visit or something like that. When you walk into other people's clinics, like the ones I own, one visit averages about $123. So they've got to see a lot of people at $9 a visit to ever catch up with my $123 a visit, where, we don't have to work nearly as hard, and yet we'll make a lot more than a system like the joint. So that system really matters. If we step on landmine number 3, it could be really hard to pay off those student loans or again, get anywhere. There we go. So now I'm going to give you my trick. So I'm going to finish off with these last few minutes here. This was my trick, because there's obviously was a trick to getting to the point where just within 90 days, I could pay off all my student loans. And it's called exponential growth. So when we talk about 0 to $1 million in 1 year, we need exponential growth. And what that is, instead of addition, it's multiplication. How many know that if I'm adding 1 + 1 + 1, I get there really slowly? But if I'm multiplying, I grow really quickly, much faster. And so the way I did that, when I got to my very first town, which was Kissimmee, Florida, open up my first clinic, I had this idea that I want to serve the community, because we get people coming into the clinic at the level we're serving the community. And you could try to do it through Facebook marketing or just hoping that you open up in the right area and people just wander in. But if you serve the community, I always had the statement, particularly at that time, that you can't outserve the community. It will always take care of you if you're taking care of it. So we did all kinds of things. What you're seeing here is, we would organize all these huge patient appreciation days where you would bring food in exchange for getting your spine evaluated. So we would raise truckloads of food, bring in hundreds of new patients, and they would do write-ups in the newspaper about us for all the good work we were doing as this new chiropractic business owner in the community. Here, what you see on the other side is I've always done adjusting in homeless shelters. So that's my waiting room at the Orlando homeless shelter. And there's the people filling out their paperwork, and those are people getting free care. So I've always done a lot of free work, children's shelters, homeless shelters. I've adjusted at like food banks, things like that. So I went into my community and served and served and served. And my practice went in 90 days. Again, as I mentioned in promoting this, we paid off our student loans in 90 days. But on top of that, I built a 600 a week practice in 90 days. Within a couple of years, we had 5 practices. And that one practice where I'm serving the community here, we were up to 1,000 a week in 9 months. And it was all because of the level I served the community. That community service led me to these really big organizations local to Osceola County where that clinic was. So we worked with Quaker Gatorade and Walt Disney and Home Depot and Tupperware, who are all located, have corporate locations in my area. And this all comes from the number one rule of small business. As I mentioned, I'm getting my PhD in business administration. And the number one rule of a small business is that the level of relationship the business owner has with the other business owners in the community is the level to which that business will achieve. So the greater the relationships, the greater the business. And it led to these really big opportunities with these big companies. And I always say that and of course, this is Christ-centered chiropractic, and this is my worldview, is that we take care of the people that nobody wants. And this is me adjusting again in the homeless shelter. Then God gives you the people everybody wants. And so this is my wife and I in the newspaper, doing for all the big events we were doing in our community there. I became the Orlando Magic Team chiropractor. There's a picture of me adjusting Grant Hill. I became, just for sports teams and school systems, there's me teaching kids. I teach hundreds of kids a year about wellness. We take care of all the local sports teams, football, baseball, basketball. And that eventually led to bigger things. Like, so I began speaking around the world. These are the two biggest churches in North America. There's me speaking at Life Church and Elevation Church. You may know Craig Groeschel and Pastor Furtick, who head up these churches. And then it led to the Olympics. So from 1996 to 2016, I was the Olympic team doctor. And there's, I'm actually speaking in London there. We're there with Kayla Harrison, who was the first woman ever to win a judo gold medal for America. If you're a wrestler, there's Cale Sanderson. He and I are there in Brazil, where we're training the team to get ready. He's the head coach at Penn State. They win the national championship every year. He was the only undefeated wrestler in the history of college wrestling, won 4 national titles, never lost a match. This all came from just serving, and getting out there and building my reputation, as well as leading to 5 massive practices along the way. I wrote my first book called Body by God, became a New York Times bestseller in the US, Canada, Australia, and China. It's now got curriculum in 140 languages. But I always go back to, it started with me just being at the homeless shelters. It started with me raising all that food for the hungry. And it just kept evolving into bigger and bigger opportunities and more practices, all from just a desire and a willingness to serve. And again, do that in the right model, in the right system. So again, we'll be getting into a lot of detail. Hopefully you guys will be here at that Orlando Dominate conference, the 8th and the 9th, that you'll get all the detail about how to do everything we've been discussing tonight. And so I thought we'd do now, again, if you got questions in the chat, if anybody wants to ask me anything here.
I have a question.
Yes.
So this is all like the backstory of how it got to be what it is now. But how does it look now? Like
in school?
Would you say that this now that you're in could be a starting point for doctors in the future, or does all this trajectory and all this journey that you went through and networking, connecting, out seeking people? Because if anything, within charity and serving the least fortunate, there's a lot of growth for the people that don't have these avenues. What would you say would be a good place to start?
So that kind of gets back to that first concept of the preparation while you're in school. So connecting yourself to the right people. So I connected myself while I was in school to all the right types of chiropractors, the ones that I wanted to emulate, where I wanted to practice like they practiced. I wanted to learn the techniques that they utilized. And so that's sort of mentoring and getting a chance to see how those guys do it and picking the right system, again, getting that right job, being prepared. That's really, as you say, for right now, where you guys are at today, that's really the first step.
And what system would be like the primordial one to start right now, like as a student?
Yeah. So that's, what, like, for example, at the seminar, what I've already began to talk to the doctors that are speaking and say, hey, there's going to be students there from Palmer, and you'll get a chance to see what these different systems are and what the different doctors are doing. And I know all of them will be very open to mentoring, letting you come in and see what they're doing, or, just showing you exactly how their system works. Certainly Dr. Rob and I are happy to show you how our systems work. And, then you find the way you're most passionate about. But again, that mentoring helps guide you to assure that you don't choose a system that doesn't have the kind of future you're looking for.
My last question would be, many students on this call right now are very art driven, philosophy based, art driven, not very evidence based, I would say, but more like art driven, like through that innate force. How would you say that's actually, like, let's say, like weight, or does it actually predetermine how successful you are going to be, or just being business minded and, well, caring vaguely about your hands and more business minded, would that take you further within the money realm, or sticking to the art and sticking to the principle, like, is that a limiting factor? Like, that's just an open question.
So that's like the most amazing question I've ever heard. So that's that really gets to the root of things. That's fantastic. So I would much rather, where I'm coming from, Dr. Schiffman's coming from, you want to start with the heart, with the philosophy, with the compassion for people, the love for the philosophy. That's where you have to start spending your time building that deep rooted passion for that at the stage you're in is phenomenal. So you're in the right spot. And then again, as we get into training and systems, that's really the next step, so that we never lose sight of our philosophy, our principles, and our passion and love for serving. We never lose sight of that as we now start to add in, okay, what are these business practices? What are these different ways of strategizing and building a practice and getting out of debt? But it's rooted in, if I didn't have the heart you're talking about, I obviously wouldn't have wanted to go out there and take care of the homeless,
Yeah. This isn't a question, but it's more of an observation. Like, when you place yourself out there, your flaws will be exposed. So you really have to be all in or nothing, for sure. Like,
yeah, no, people can tell who you are. So when you hit your community and you say you're there to serve it, they'll be checking you out to see if that's actually true. I've heard many times from all the different coaches and teachers and principals and pastors, all those different people I work with. They said, when I first met you, I wondered, is this for real? And then they checked me out for 2-3 months. He's consistent. He means it. And then we became friends and opportunities arose. Other questions? You can do the same thing if you'd like. You can unmute yourself if you want to just ask the question, or you could put it in the chat there. Dr. Matt posed something. He said, "What's the number one skill students should be developing while they're in school?" And I would say, again, just knowing the philosophy, learning the principles of chiropractic. But I would point out again, connecting yourself to a mentor or set of mentors where you get a chance to really experience the kind of practice that you want to be a part of and have the opportunity to learn and participate in some of what they're doing. Those are the blue chip chiropractic students who really get out and are very successful very fast. All right, guys. Well, appreciate you all. You could always contact us. We're happy to talk further. Dr. Rob and I are here for you. Matt, of course, as well. He's the anchor to CCC. He runs the show. So appreciate you all. We'll see you hopefully all here in a few weeks in Orlando. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving. Bless you. Remember who you are.